the ASSAR project actually is very key, especially looking at semi-arid specific area, geographical context, which is the semi-arid regions of West Africa. I think that region has long been very vulnerable, not just to climate change, but other factors which also contributing to the vulnerability of people in that particular region. So most adaptation projects are more quick to do implementation without doing rigorous research to actually understand the context of the area which they are doing implementation. One good thing about ASSAR is ASSAR is actually doing a rigorous research first to understand the various processes and the various things that goes on in semi-arid region before an implementation can be rolled out.
My research is about understanding the vulnerability and then adaptation strategies, as well as the well-being of smallholder farmers in the Lora and the Nandom districts of Ghana. And the essence of my work is to identify the vulnerable communities within these two districts, and also identify the vulnerable households within these communities that have been identified to be vulnerable.
My work is on the implications of the well-being of users of shared resources in the Lora district. I want to look at, first of all, the main sources and of water resources within the communities that I was working. And then upon identifying the main sources, then I look at the quality of the water. And then afterwards I have an objective to look at the structures in place for water management, and then structures in place for conflict management.
I'm working on assessing climate change adaptive strategies by smallholder livestock farmers in the Upper West region of Ghana.
I'm looking at adaptation strategies of smallholder farmers to climate variability and change in the Upper West region. A lot of interventions have gone on regarding agriculture adaptation in that part of the country. The people use a combination of the modern or introduced strategies and then their own farm level indigenous strategies to cope with the current variability and change, climate change. So I'm focusing on looking at the local strategies and then the introduced strategies that are used around the steady area, and then try to look at how effective it is, so that going forward, those that have a positive impact on household food security will be recommended for promotion by both government and non-governmental organizations working around the area.
Currently in the process to do my research, which is basically talking about social differentiation in the context of climate change vulnerability and change, and specifically looking at groundnut farmers in the Upper West region.
Smallholder farmers of late are unable to tell or predict the onset of rain, which is very important for them because their agricultural activities are mainly rain-fed, and so they wait on rains to do their activities. And when they are not able to tell and also deal with the changes that are seen recently, it means that there is going to be food security implications. I think that there's a need to build capacity of smallholder farmers in terms of agricultural intensification, water resource availability. What the research intends to do is to first investigate the adaptation options of these smallholder farmers and then look at how this has affected their livelihoods or their well-being. Look at the patterns of vulnerabilities and the patterns of responses to this risk. I also would like to look at the institutional arrangements that enable or constrain adaptation in the study area.
For your research to be actually important and adapted by society, it must have several components. Stakeholder participation at both levels, either local or national level, and even the indigenous groups must feel that they are included in the process, so that when you are bringing something to them, it will not look like something that is strange or new. They have been part of the research process, so the uptake would be very, very easier than like actually sidelining or not including them in the research process.
Because more often than not, we do things, we don't involve the people who are on board, who are supposed to be the main reasons why we are carrying out or undertaking this research. But with ASSAR and with the introduction of the research into use and the TSP, I think there will be a positive change in terms of development.
One thing that I understand is that research into use is not just a researcher having his research question and come in and say, well, I want to do this, come, let's say, invite people and say, well, what I'm doing, and doing what you want to know. It's another way of doing research and making our research findings very useful for communities. And then it includes involving, engaging communities since the beginning.
I don't want a situation whereby the research will be done and then it will be shelved. I want a situation where we can translate the research information into a product where it will be useful for the people in the community, so that a mark will be left. Because at the end of the day, if we are not involved in the development process, then what is the essence of the research?
But until I went through this transformative scenario planning and the research into use, it has always been the traditional way of doing your research work and submitting it to your department, and you are through and get your certificate. But it has awakened my understanding that research should not just end into our shelves, or we shouldn't do it just because of our personal interest, but how we could also involve stakeholders on board to fashion out how to move forward as a group in terms of the findings we've carried out in our research. So the RIU and the TSP, I think, is something which is really interesting, and I would like to adopt them in any discourse I find myself.